Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us from. My name is Sarup, and today we are going to cover knowledge management. This is part two of a series. So if you have not caught the part one, I'd highly recommend that you catch up on that. We'll do a quick recap as we get into the content. But in the first section, in the first part, we did go into deep about fundamentals around knowledge management, which will be important for this section today. Okay, before I get started, during this presentation, I may talk a little bit about roadmap. So the safe harbor notice essentially saying that do not make purchasing decisions based upon anything that I've mentioned to be part of roadmap. Please only make your decisions based upon whatever is already released. I lead the inbound product management at ServiceNow for customer workflow products, specifically focused on customer engagement, which includes capabilities like self-service, which has knowledge management communities, our portal, our embedded services, our omni-channel capabilities, both customer-facing as well as frontline agent experience. And I'm looking at those digital channels. That's what I do here. Knowledge management is part of the portfolio, and I have been a lifelonger around knowledge. With ServiceNow, I've been around 6.5 years, total 7.5 years of experience, including field experience in implementing self-service and knowledge management. This is a part of a series of live on ServiceNow events that we do. We have various topics that we have covered in the past, and we will continue to do more and more. Specifically around topics around virtual agents, predictive intelligence, NLU, NLP. So please do join these series. These are immensely helpful for you to get started on some of the core capabilities of ServiceNow. Today, as I said, we'll do a quick recap of part one. And then the topics that are set up today are cover about service portal, talk about feedback management, security. That sometimes gets a little bit complex, so hope I can get your attention on that. Then we'll talk about the key analytics and metrics that we track. And one of the deep dive topics around analytics is knowledge demand insights, which is a unique play of analytics plus AI. And then if we have time, we're going to get into some of the best practices content that we have. Plus, there is some bonus content that is at the end of this deck, which we most likely will run out of time and not be able to cover. When the deck is uploaded on the community, you will be able to access that. And those are essentially advanced FAQs that you may need as you go deeper and deeper into your knowledge implementation with ServiceNow. So what did we cover in part one? We did the knowledge management fundamentals, talked about KCS, we talked about knowledge administration and setup, and then we covered knowledge search. And again, I highly recommend you to catch up on that recording from the community, and the content is also uploaded there. You will find a lot of good content that is also updated based upon the latest releases. So keeping that in mind, we should launch our first poll. Hosting team, could you please launch the poll? Wow, you're a fast bunch. Within 10 seconds, I see 70%. $86. Awesome. I think it has stabilized. Can we end the poll and show the results? Awesome. About 67% of you watched it, and then some of you have watched it on demand. For the rest of you who did not watch it, like I said, highly recommend that you catch it up. But we'll still get this going. A few of those topics that we covered in part one, we'll just quickly cover. In part, we mentioned that ServiceNow is a platform for digital business. We also call this the platform of platform slides. So at the middle section, you see a lot of foundational capabilities that are there in the platform, and knowledge management is one of those. And then there are configuration intelligence, and then the third-party systems to which we integrate. At the end of it, what you implement for your organizations are these workflows, customer or industry workflows for your external facing organization, employee workflows for your employees, technology workflows for your CIO's organization, including your IT workflow and all that. And then if you have a developer population in your organization, or you're working with SIs in the ecosystem, they use Accreator workflows to develop solutions for you. We also talked about the knowledge ecosystem. I'll quickly build this up. So knowledge is one of the content sources that you have in your ecosystem. Customers and employees can find content via various means. And then we also push content into public search engines via SEO. Sorry. Oh, I think my PPT was being a little bit slow to respond. On the other side of it, you have the agent experience. The agents are primarily resolving issues, whether it's incident cases, HR cases, as a result of which we talked about KCS. During that process, they create knowledge. Knowledge is also created by authors and domain experts. And then we have a governance process as a knowledge manager, which I hope some of you are from that community. So you will appreciate some of the content that we're covering. We also talked about communities as a product, which is user-generated content, whereas knowledge is organization or internally generated syndicated content. Communities is user-generated content. And that primarily comes by people asking each other within the community and through various artifacts that they create, mostly Q&A content, that there is user-generated content. And that's not just for users. Agents can participate, and we can also push questions that didn't get answered into formal cases and incidents. We have the community moderator who manages most of these processes. It's an important activity. And then the final link between knowledge and communities is that any correct answers from the community can be harvested to make it an article. And we do it with attribution. So the person who might not be an internal person who actually gave the answer would be designated as an author for that content. And then we also talked about that AI search opens up your doors for integrating with third-party content that may be there in your ecosystem outside of ServiceNow. We talked about KCS. There are essentially two loops. The A loop, which is the solve loop, where you are capturing content as you solve issues, you're structuring them, you're reusing them, and you're improving them. We talked about the fact that if you're using the content, attaching, linking, then you are actually improving that content by validating it. And then the other side is the evolve loop. So those are things that we do to make sure that there is governance around the content. At a very high level, we talked about that knowledge functionality within ServiceNow is broken down into three major areas. So you have the end user experience, which might be the employee experience or the customer experience. You have the agent experience who are actually resolving issues. And then finally, you have process governance, which is the part where the knowledge managers do a lot of the work. So with that, we'll jump into the part 2 of the content today. First topic is knowledge portal. So as most of you know, there is a knowledge service portal homepage. And this is the portal that we recommend for you to use for internal and external users to consume knowledge. While I say that, most of the time, if you're using your employee workflow or customer workflow, you would have a customer portal or an employee service center. That should be still the primary way of, for employees and customers to get information and knowledge. Portal, the components in the knowledge portal actually get, put into the employee portal or the customer portal. However, if you're using knowledge management standalone, the service portal is the way to go, not the platform UI page. And the homepage provides various widgets, search filters, multi-language search, to tailor to your needs. And then there is, if you are still using the legacy homepage, which is $knowledge.to, which came out in the Fuji release, even before my time here at ServiceNow, there is a property that you can be able to redirect users to the newer portal. This is how that portal looks like. It's built on the service portal framework, 3 major pages: home page, search results page, and the article view page. There is tons of configurability. The portal itself provides a lot of layout and capability, but then each of those widgets have widget instances that you can configure to get quick changes without having to do any code. So on this page, you are seeing the home page and the article view page. The search results page is this next slide. Again, a highly configurable page. The facets can be configured. Your sort options can be configured. Your data facets, like you can create custom data facets if you need to, and showing some of those instance options that you can access as an administrator. Again, administrator, so changes apply for every user. It's not personalizable, but even then there is a lot of configurability which did not exist on the platform page. Again, a little bit of a deep dive on the facets itself. You can have different types of facets. So language facets, so in which we do support multi-language search. And if a user does select languages, that retains across sessions. So you don't have to select that every time. And then you can create custom list field facets as well. And we support different types of single select and multi-select options. So again, configurability was on the top of our mind when we built this out. So that's the portal. As I said, highly recommended if you're using Knowledge standalone. Otherwise, use within the employee and the customer portals. These capabilities are embedded within that. Next topic is feedback management. So not only is it important to create content and then share that content, disseminate that through search and through the portal, feedback is a very critical part of your knowledge management processes. I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but if you don't act to the feedback, then users will lose confidence. And so we have built out quite a deep capability around this. Let me go through that. Like I said, feedback is a critical part of the KCS solve loop. If you've not attended the first session, you'll find that why I'll be talking about KCS a lot. KCS is essentially the methodology that we have chosen for implementing knowledge management within the ServiceNow ecosystem. And primarily because KCS has best practices for knowledge in the context of service, which is essentially what we are doing with ITSM, with customer service management, HR, and everything. So there are various use cases around feedback, both assisted and solved, flag or fix. And so this is where it comes in. The feedback options that we provide, you can flag articles if it is incorrect or inappropriate. This is available to the agents. You can rate an article on a scale of 1 to 5. You can mark an article as helpful or not. You can also add comments. We support threaded comments as well. And as of Tokyo release, you can also find that you can configure the feedback options for a given knowledge base. So if you say that, hey, in the HR knowledge base, I don't want to have feedback, but in the IT knowledge base, I do want to have feedback, you can do that. And you can even go to a granular level that you can enable only one type of feedback. Like you may want to do a rating, but not comments. So those granularity is available. It's important to also know, since this is a advanced content today, so we'll also talk about article versioning. So we talked about article versioning in the last part one. How do feedback and article versioning work? So, for example, if you have rated an article, there is an average rating that is persisted on the article view, on the article metadata, that gets carried over when you create a new version of that article. And there is also a helpfulness percentage that gets carried over. Comments are displayed at the bottom of the article across all versions of that article. But essentially comments are associated with an article in the database. When you flag an article, and after that, if a new version is created by checking out an article, that flag is actually reset to false. View count is carried over to the checked out article. So the view count is accumulated across all the versions of the article. And then the use count as well. So use count is when an article is attached or marked as helpful. That is also carried over. Important to know. And then to top it off, we built a capability called as actionable feedback. So in certain cases, you will get a high volume of feedback. So when B2C websites like Disney uses knowledge management, they do get a lot of feedback. So how do you manage that amount of feedback? We created something called as an actionable feedback within the product. And essentially what it does is you can trigger certain conditions, like if the rating is below 3, or if the article was marked as unhelpful, then this pop-up shows up and the user has to give feedback on why they have given that negative feedback. And that then gets assigned as a feedback task to the author of the article or the owner of the article. In the last series, we talked about ownership groups as well. So ownership groups, if enabled, essentially gives the ownership of the article, as its name states, to a group. So more than one person can manage it. And that's typically what we would recommend as a best practice, because people move out, people may be on leave. So there should be somebody to take care of the feedback. However, actionable feedback allows us to have this closed group process to take that feedback, have somebody take a look at it, take various actions around it, like updating the article or creating a new article, updating search configuration so that article is findable. And then they can respond to the user. And through an email-based notification system, the user who gave the feedback knows that his or her feedback has been actioned. There are various properties around actionable feedback, and you can use that. Essentially, it is when does actionable feedback get triggered? So these are the various properties that you can use to trigger actionable feedback. The last property here is important. This is something that came up in the last couple of releases, where earlier when a feedback task was, when the feedback prompt was shown, but the user decided not to give feedback, specifically the reason for the feedback, and moved away, we would still create a feedback task. While we feel that is still appropriate because the user had an issue, but just they are lazy enough to not give the feedback, we did add a capability where you can configure so that you can force the user to give some explicit feedback when they have a negative feedback. So that was knowledge feedback. Again, a key part of it. Knowledge security is the next topic. And essentially what we're trying to do is to configure access to the knowledge base or the articles themselves. This topic does get a little bit complicated, and the way I say this is there is a lot of configurability, but with power comes responsibility. So you will see that here. So one of the key things, key constructs that we have in knowledge management is user criteria. So we secure articles as well as knowledge bases by user criteria. Roles can be used. That was the way to do it, but roles do not scale. And so that's why we strongly recommend user criteria. And what user criteria is a dynamic list of users based upon what group they belong to, what role, what department, what location. You can, in fact, even add custom attributes to a user criteria. And essentially, you're creating a list of users through user criteria. And once you have created that user criteria, you can say that this set of users can do a certain set of things. So they can either contribute or read articles in a knowledge base. You can read or contribute at the article level. You can read and contribute at the KB level. Obviously, they flow down. So that's where a lot of sort of complications come in. We'll talk a little bit about, there is an interesting tool that we also ship to help you manage this. User criteria also allows for custom scripted user criteria. So if you want to write a piece of script that determines a list of users should have access to that user criteria, it's possible. It's ServiceNow. ServiceNow will always allow you to have customization, but we recommend that you do thorough performance testing if you are doing scripted user criteria, specifically around search results and article view loading and all of that. These are some of the screenshots around it. So we talked about at a KB level, you can do can read, cannot read, can contribute. Contribute permission also gives you read permissions. They inherit that. And then at the article level also, you can apply user criteria on who can read and who cannot read. And so there are some overall exceptions that we also support. We also support field level controls through templates. However, on the field level, so when I say field level, you have an article template and you have 5 fields, including an internal field called as internal notes. You can say that internal notes is only available to agents population. Now, that is not managed through user criteria. That is managed through roles and encryption context and all of that. So that is covered in an advanced topic. Like I was saying, it can get complicated. There is a lot of configurability available, which allows you, flexibility in however you want to set the access control up. But if you have this, then the diagnostic tools comes in very handy. So you can say that, hey, for a given user on a given article or a given knowledge base, what is the access? So it will determine everything and give you what is the overall access that the user has and what kind of user criteria is giving them access. So it's very easy for you to say that, okay, because of certain things, this person can read this article. So why don't we modify the user criteria to remove access if you want to? So this is super helpful in terms of diagnostics and helping out. Also, we had a lot of feedback from folks like you and our customers on having some sort of a way to manage some advanced configuration. So where you may want a set of users to have contribute permissions on the entire knowledge base, but you may not want them to be able to read all the articles. There are use cases that you may encounter for that. So just putting this out that there is a property that we released in the last couple of releases or so, where if you set this property to true, then the article level read access, you can say, hey, this user cannot read, even though that user has contribute permissions. So that is something that we support. I think I talked about this on the ownership group mentioned in the part 1. But if you're using ownership group and you have given a group of authors, a group of users access to an article via them being part of an ownership group and assigning that ownership group to the article, that sort of supersedes their access. So they will have contribute access to that article and they will have read access to that article if they are part of an ownership group that is associated with an article. Also, I did want to mention user criteria and knowledge blocks. So we talked about knowledge blocks in the last section. So you have knowledge blocks are essentially reusable segments of content. So it's another knowledge article, but a different type of article. And you can add those articles into another article. So typical examples of policies and all of that. So the same policy document can be viewed by folks globally and at different levels within the organization. And when they see that article, they will see the policy that is specific to them. Now, the way we manage it is you apply the user criteria at the knowledge blocks level, and the knowledge blocks show up in the article or get evaluated in the Zing search based upon the user criteria that is associated with it. So again, highly flexible for all sorts of use cases. Okay, so we have reached a point where we covered a couple of advanced topics. I also mentioned a lot about KCS in our first part, and we talked about it. So launching the poll here. Thank you, the host team. Okay, I think it has stabilized. So quickly looking at the results, it's a healthy 63% who were aware of knowledge-centered service and have adopted. So 13% of you have adopted. So that's great to know. Please do share any feedback that you have about your KCS journey with ServiceNow. Like I said in part one, I am a strong believer in this methodology, and I've seen amazing results for organizations who have adopted KCS in the effectiveness of the knowledge programs. If you have feedback, do share with us. Okay, moving on. So we're going to talk about knowledge analytics. So you learned about knowledge management, you deployed knowledge management, you made sure that everybody has access to it. You have made sure those who should not have access, they don't get access to the right articles. It's all going hunky-dory. You also had search. We talked about that last part. And so everybody's having access to the content that they need to. Now, finally, you want to measure the effectiveness. So there are several dashboards, and some of these are legacy dashboards that have carried on forward. But most of our advanced dashboards use performance analytics product, which is what we strongly recommend for you to leverage the best of analytics that ServiceNow can provide. So the knowledge management dashboard at a very high level, there are three tabs. If you see, there is the content usage. So what is the user activity in terms of searches, in terms of article views? We also measure something called as click-through rate. It's like how many times did a user actually click through on a search results? And then what is the click rank? I think the screenshot is a bit cut out here. Click rank suggests, like, from the top, what was the rank of the article that they clicked? So higher click-through rates are better, like 60, 70%. Lower click ranks are better, means that the results are more relevant. There is also content governance. These are some of the basic reports around time to publish, articles published, and all of that. And if you go to our documentation site, you will see a bunch of metrics and that we have made available for knowledge that you can put into your dashboards. Then we built something called as self-service analytics. This is available for, I think, all the three workflows. Essentially, what we are doing is we are taking the concept of deflection and trying to find out how many issues that a customer is contacting us are getting deflected. And you can define what is a deflection for you. So if a user views an article, does not create an incident, we would, within the next 24 hours, we would call that as a deflection. So you could define what pattern consists of a deflection, what is explicit, what is implicit deflection, and then you can use that for measuring how effective your knowledge is. We also do that for knowledge community, for VA, for catalog as well. The screenshot is not denoting that, and you can measure those over time. What you can also do is to take a look at cost. And if you say that an incident costs you X number of dollars or whatever currency you're using in your location, you can determine how much cost has a given channel, and the channel can be knowledge community, VA, catalog, amongst others. How much cost savings is that doing because of the deflections? The self-service analytics also has an unsuccessful searches widget as well. So what it does is it finds searches where the user did not click through on any results, or it returns 0 results, and it takes that and it takes those search terms and does a clustering. And using that clustering, it can say that, hey, these search terms are related. You can analyze those and either do some tuning to point them to the right articles, or actually create articles for this. You can create knowledge gaps as well as a result of this. So these are actionable reports which are using AI techniques like clustering to do some of that. Finally, we're going to talk about knowledge demand insights. So essentially, this is sort of our premier capability in terms of looking at knowledge articles and looking at cases or incidents in a given time and saying that what are your gaps in the knowledge base, and using that to guide you to create certain set of articles to improve your deflection rate. So it's available in incident management, CSM, as well as for HR case. We're going to deep dive on this a little bit. So what is a knowledge gap per se? And what is the business case? So we essentially are trying to say that what is available in the knowledge base versus what we need to know is the gap. And what we need to know is usually indicated by what the customers or your employees are asking you in the context of an incident case or an HR case. Obviously, if you're creating this knowledge article, you will get better deflection. You will improve the quality of your knowledge base. Essentially, what happens is this is a little bit more on the architecture of this. So you take in various inputs like the case and incidents and the knowledge base. You apply a bunch of machine learning techniques and heuristics to say that what articles do not, what incidents or cases do not have coverage based upon the knowledge bases articles that we have, and then find knowledge gaps. And those knowledge gaps get assigned to various folks. You can have a curation user, which is essentially a knowledge demand experts who takes a look at those knowledge gaps and assigns to authors to create knowledge articles. Super effective. Again, this is more into the technology of it. I'm going to skip it. You can take a look at it when you get the content. This was sort of an internal analysis we were doing as we were tuning the ML algorithms. What we found is that you have a lot of the blue dots are your cases, the red dots are your knowledge articles, and we found that there were areas where they didn't have any coverage. Right? Obviously, you are not going to see this in the instance. This is more of an internal analysis for us. So apart from just not lacking coverage, good coverage, or candidates for revision, which also tells you candidates for retirement, these two we have not implemented yet. Those are in the roadmap in terms of giving you advice on which articles you should retire. This is what you do see in the product. What you will see is that it will give you a Pareto chart. These bars represent the excuse me a second. These bars represent the clusters of cases, and this line represents the 80-20 rule. So what it is basically saying is that if you solve for these clusters, these 7 or 8 clusters, you will actually solve for 80% of your cases that do not have a knowledge coverage. When you click on any of these clusters, you will see the cases. Obviously, this is a demo instance, so they are all looking the same, but you will see that these cases are related to each other. We do some similarity and clustering around it. And then you can pick a few articles and create a knowledge gap out of it. And that knowledge gap can be then converted into a knowledge article as a part of your actionable feedback process. So a closed loop process to help you improve the quality of your knowledge base and make it more effective in solving incidents and cases that are coming in. So that was knowledge demand insights. So those were some of the very high level topics. I'm now going to get into some of the best practice content. How are we doing on Q&A? Should we take a break to answer some of the Q?
Yes, Sarup, we've been answering them all along. We have one that's for IT question that says, how to increase adoption for knowledge management, even as quick suggestions for incidents we're facing now.
Yeah, so
they're facing low adoption on knowledge.
Yeah, so we may need to deep dive on this, Aditya, but one of the ways of improving adoption of knowledge is obviously having a knowledge portal, so folks should know where to go to. But the second thing is when they do create an incident, we do have a way to show articles within the record producer as a means of explicit deflection. So based upon the information that they're giving in the incident, you can predict, you can show articles and they can click on the article and mark it as explicitly, say, yeah, this helped. So that is one way of doing it. There are other capabilities that are there in the product like Agent Zero or capabilities such as autoresponders that you can set up where you can send a knowledge article back to a person who has created incidents. without really assigning that incident to somebody. And that's usually a good way to say that, hey, there is a knowledge article that solves this issue. And since you're pointing to them article in the portal, they're more likely to be create that habit to view that article in the future, go to the portal in the future. So those are some ways, but I'm sure our ITS and product management team can help you in doing a deeper dive, and then maybe our host team can coordinate that. Okay, seems like we've answered another set of questions there. Thank you, Harriet, Aditya, and Mank. So we'll get into the best practice content. From a KCS point of view, the first thing that we say is, identify your knowledge roles like candidate, contributor, publish, coach, and domain expert. Typically, candidates can view articles, can assign articles to incidents and cases. Contributors can create articles as well. Publisher can actually publish that all the way. Coach is used in our AQI and some of the other use cases where if you want somebody to view the articles and do quality analysis of that, then coaches come in. Domain experts, they're typically curating the knowledge base. So the knowledge demand insights feature that we talked about is a domain expert feature. We do suggest to use templates. Templates provide structure to your articles. They provide governance. They improve readability. If you have external content, we do suggest that use AI search and the external content plugin for AI search to bring that content into ServiceNow. When you have knowledge that is fractured across multiple systems, that's usually a burden on the users, and they will end up not looking at them and just picking up the phone or sending an email. Helping agents link articles. We have metrics in the dashboards about looking at linking rate. Linking is a very healthy activity, which essentially is saying that the articles are getting reused. And sometimes enforcing that is not a bad idea. And then knowledge demand insights is another way of using to improve your linking rate, because you will end up having more articles that are solving the issue. So not only is linking adherence important, there is also linking accuracy. So you should monitor that, do some sampling and see, are they doing the proper linking? So are they linking just for the sake of the process, or do they really follow the process? So some of the roadmap items like PAR reports, performance adherence reports, are going to tackle that. AQI, we have a full-fledged process around that. And then tracking and improving knowledge management. At the core of it is also a very heavy change management heavy process. So having a program around it is very helpful. And KCS has excellent guidelines around managing knowledge management programs. From an end user experience, self-service is something that we strongly recommend. If you don't have self-service, you will always have exponential growth in your support cost as the complexity of issues, complexity of products increase for you. You need to have self-service and have the benefits of the scale that knowledge management provides. KM Service Portal is the best way to do that. You also have the CSM and the ITSM portals that you can use for that. Using AI search to help in the findability of the content, again, strongly recommended. We didn't cover subscriptions, but you can look up subscriptions in our documentation. Maybe the team can put that link on the Zoom chat. Subscriptions are an excellent way of keeping users up to date. So users can subscribe to a knowledge base or an article. So if you subscribe to a knowledge base, you will know if there are new articles published. If you subscribe to an article, you will know the changes that have been done. Feedback management, I think we talked about it. Feedback management is very important to keep up the morale of your users that are using the content and providing feedback, as well as continuous improvement of the quality of the article. SEO, I think there is enough in the external Google search engines world that how important SEO is if you are having a knowledge base published externally. And we do a lot of effort. Even some of the roadmap work that we are doing right now is focused, squarely on SEO. I think the question that came from one of our colleagues here, deflecting incidents and cases to record producer, that's another great way of improving the adoption of knowledge and making sure that they access knowledge before they actually create the case. So deflection, leveraging communities to outsource content. There are psychological studies which say that communities content, user-generated content is more trustworthy for users than knowledge articles, specifically in B2C retail segment. So communities is something that we would recommend as well. And then multilingual search. Do not create frustrating experiences for your folks that do not understand the primary language of your organization. So that is important. Moving on to agent experience, we encourage agents to search early, search often. So don't try to reinvent the wheel every time. First, search about it, and there are various configurations available that are there in the advanced FAQ document here, where you can make sure that as you fill up different fields in the incident, like the cause, symptoms, resolutions, you can also make further searches. And then provide contextual search, enable contextual search for your agents, whether it's the workspace, whether it's agent assist, or in the core UI, UI 16, enable that. Enable various types of contextual search like articles, communities, even using AI to show similar articles or similar incidents, recommendations or guided decisions. You want to help your agents being able to solve issues better and faster. With churn in the agent population, the ramp up time can be seriously reduced if you are providing context aware recommendation. Again, when they work with a knowledge article, encourage them to interact with it, like attach it if they find it helpful, to send it to the customer. So attaching it sends to the customer, marking that helpful, keeps that link and says that to other agents who are working on the same incident or case that this content is helpful. Flagging and fixing. So knowledge management is a collective ownership responsibility. It is not the responsibility of those select half a dozen people sitting in Seattle that are going to create the knowledge articles. Sorry, I don't mean to offend any company in Seattle. But the idea being that it's a collective responsibility. If you find something that is not appropriate, flag it so that somebody can take care of it. If you actually have the permission, like if you are a contributor or a publisher as a KCS role, then fix it. And believe me, your agents who are writing case notes and incident notes and talking to customers and employees, they know sufficient language and to be able to write articles. It's proven with the KCS methodology. And so don't have trust issues around that. Create knowledge in context as well using article templates. So if you are creating a knowledge article as a part of the interaction of solving an incident or a case, then create a knowledge article if there's nothing existing. And there is a feature available where it actually copies various fields from the incident or case and puts it into the knowledge article and the template. So we ship an out-of-the-box template for KCS. Take a look at it. That's what we recommend. And the out-of-the-box configuration for both incident management and CSM and HR uses that. Agent workspace, again, this is not directly related to knowledge, but agent workspace is optimized for improving the performance of agents, and knowledge is integrated into it through agent assist. Again, for agents, they need to report knowledge gaps when there is nothing that they can find. There is a closed loop process to solve it. If they don't report it, will not find it, and that gap will exist. Obviously, knowledge demand insights can solve for it, but encourage those behaviors. And then finally, from the community, if answers are not found to certain questions, and those have a lot of upvotes in terms of people having the same problem, then have some automated process around converting those unanswered questions into cases or incidents. Again, strongly recommended. Finally, on governance, which is the stuff that knowledge managers love. Again, I'll spend more time on these because each of these lines are important. Each of these bullet points are important. So knowledge bases, do not create knowledge base, one for internal, one for external. Huge no-no. You have enough configurability in your user criteria and article level user criteria to say that you have a customer service knowledge base, and some articles in that customer service knowledge base is available for agents only. You can do that. Same applies for incident management and ITSM. You can say that, hey, the support desk has a set of articles within a given knowledge base that overall is available to all employees. And then you can, even within an article, you can do to have that structure and styling, and you can say that within an article, part of the article is only available to the agents. You can do that. Do not duplicate knowledge articles. You will have challenges in keeping them up to date and all of that. Article templates, we talked about that. Controlling article structure for your KB by associating articles to them. And then categorization, those are important. Reviewing the metrics, you cannot just let when you're driving your car, you take a look at the gauge, right? You cannot drive the car if you're not looking at the gauge. Same applies to a program. Review the metrics, change configurations, tinker it, specifically in the early days. Demand insights, again, strongly recommended. It leverages the power of AI to help you create better articles, improve your deflection. Use some of the search related gaps that we have in the knowledge dashboard. Find unsuccessful searches, solve for those. Continuous process around improving the quality of knowledge. Effectiveness around search trends, like we talked about, click-through report and click-rank report and all of those. Take a look at it. We also provide tools around creating high-quality content. So you can either use knowledge Word documents and you can import them into ServiceNow. But also we built recently in the Paris release a way for using Microsoft Word Online, and you can directly publish articles from there into your authoring process. So you have the best of the Microsoft Word Online editor, plus the Office 365 collaboration capabilities. And when you are ready, you just publish that. So we have a nice integration that works on that. Ensuring article recency by configuring article validity. So you also want to make sure that articles are not getting stale. There is an article validity at the KB level that you can assign. So it says that, hey, after 365 days, the articles will no longer be valid and they're no longer searchable. You can still find that article if you go there. So you can configure that date. And that date also has associated notifications. So 1 month, 1 week before that, you can send notifications to the author saying that, hey, this article is going to get expire because the validity is coming up. Again, great ideas for keeping your articles fresh. And then having a KCS program, which I would strongly recommend, also teaches you how to curate coaches and domain experts within your ecosystem, and they help in improving the quality of your articles. Then we're going to talk about article content itself, how to write good articles, right? So KB article templates, they help in standardizing. I think I've told about 3 times. I can hope that helps in the retention of this particular concept. Applying field level security to say that, hey, this article, this part of the article is only accessible to a select audience. Using knowledge blocks so that you are reusing content specifically for policies and all of that is super helpful. Establishing standards for authoring quality. You can put those standards in the form of your AQI. So consistent format, keeping language clear and concise. You can create a standards list for your organization. Adding screenshots or videos within the content is always going to attract more viewership than just text-only content. Knowledge articles are not meant to be long documents, except in the case of HR policies, So knowledge articles, by definition, if you know the data, information, knowledge, wisdom pyramid, knowledge is actionable. So it has to be short, it has to be digestible, it has to have context in which this knowledge applies. Don't try to create 5-page documents. That is not a knowledge article. That's documentation. And documentation, knowledge management are two different things. We can speak at length about that. Answer only one question in each article. Use clear action-based titles. So, issue with my phone screen or issue with my phone Wi-Fi, right? So mentioning those clear terms in the title actually helps. Putting terms and acronyms in your synonym dictionary, that's hugely helpful. Adding search phrases into articles via meta tags and all of that, again, hugely helpful. Obviously, with AI sets, some of that is much easier. Linking articles to show relationships. So there is a way to link one article to another. So the way there is a field, there is a limited list where you can do that. So somebody is looking for travel policy. You also want to say, hey, how to enable your credit card for foreign travel, right? So those are some of the things that you can easily do. And then in the UI, there is a widget that shows the linked articles. In the article itself, you can add context. Like at the top of the article, you can have a summary say, does this really article apply? Don't expect them to read through the article and then at the end of it, no, it doesn't apply. Simple ideas like what product is this article about? That will help. So we are at the end of our part 2 as well today. So I have added some links around from KCS, documentation for our knowledge product. I have also provided a link to the community topic on ServiceNow community. By the way, we use our own product there. So the knowledge topic is there, so you can have discussions with other fellow knowledge managers and knowledge practitioners. There is an FAQ article that some of our engineers and documentation folks created because those are the common questions that come up. So again, this is the user-generated content, not necessarily documentation that you can take a look at. If you have piqued your interest about KCS, again, giving some links to some KCS content, strongly recommended. It's a thoroughly well-vetted methodology, and we have seen some great success with it. So I'm going to spend the last 3-4 minutes on questions. I do have some bonus content at the end of this deck, which is FAQ on advanced topics, which I'm not going to cover in this, but let's do some Q&A here. And when you get the bonus content, please do read through it if you have questions. I know our hosting team is putting these on the community as well. So put your questions there, mention me. I'll try to answer those. Okay.
We just have the one question there, Sarup, from Ula. And the question is, why should, I assume, knowledge bases be made for departments and not for the audience? She has 2 knowledge bases, one for an IT intern and one for end users. And those are restricted to always be reviewed and approved.
Okay, so So the simple policy is this, like, for example, if your intern IT still needs to find out how to access the corporate Wi-Fi. Now, that article, would you be duplicating for your employees as well as for your intern? Probably not. You will have challenges in keeping them up to date. And I'm using an example that may not be as relevant. So the idea here is to have reusability of your content across your user bases, and then only restrict the content that they should not see or should see at the article level. However, Ula, it may depend upon use case to use case. You may have some situation within your organization that may need you to create something specifically for IT. Interns and IT, that is okay. Sometimes we do see this use case where you create a separate knowledge base for exclusive content, right? So This applies more in terms of customer service management, where we have seen a customer who has 20 odd products and they want to provide entitlement to those knowledge articles. So they would create 20 different knowledge bases, but then there is common FAQ across all the products that they would put in a common knowledge base. So it's okay to do those kind of setup as well, but our advice would be based upon understanding your use case a little bit better. Okay, it seems we are at the end of our time. Appreciate the participation across both the sessions. Thank you so much. It has been an honor and pleasure to bring this to you. And as I said, if you have questions that are lingering, put them on the community. A bunch of folks will jump in to answer that, including myself. And do join other events in this series. These are incredibly helpful for you to get started on ServiceNow. Thank you. And good evening, good day, and good afternoon.